These times are strange, it's quite surreal. It's never been like this. Remembering the good old days when we could hug and kiss. We'd pack the gyms and restaurants and move through public settings. We'd give high fives and drink at dives, hold hands and dance at weddings. Now the days are longer, yet the darker in a way. We're pressing pause on normalcy, just going day by day. But we can still make jokes and art, garden, dance and sing. Cook, read books, try on fun looks and learn about new things. We can talk with friends of ours and have a heart to heart, just so long as we all stay 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart. It's the newest thing to do. Stay 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart. The distance between me and you, 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart. And when I say I'll keep you very close to my heart, it's purely metaphorical. These times are quite historical, so step aside, let's live our lives 6 feet apart.
Hello, hello, and welcome to Sunday Night Stories produced by 6 Feet Apart Productions. And we at 6 Feet Apart Productions are so thrilled tonight because we have somebody that I couldn't have imagined that we would have been able to get. We were talking when we first started this about getting storytellers that we knew from Berkeley and Oakland and San Francisco. And then we thought, hey, why not go after the big fish? You know what I mean? They're at home like us doing nothing. Maybe we could actually get them. So I asked this particular storyteller, and much to my amazement, she agreed to come on and do our little show. So I'll be introducing her in a minute. And I'm going to keep my part very short because usually, as an MC or as an opening act, you would do about 5 to 10 minutes. But I cannot see wasting any time with my frivolity when we can hear from her and when we can do a question and answer afterwards and hear more from her. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm not going to waste a lot of time on comedy. And here's the other thing about comedy. I'm thinking about not doing comedy anymore because number one, I'm not very great at comedy. You know, I've always been good at it, but I'm not great at it. And really, if you're not great at something by 62, come on. So anyway, and I'm so into storytelling now. I discovered storytelling about a year and a half ago and just am in love with that. So that's where my focus is. But here's the thing about being a comedian and deciding to stop being a comedian is that you have to let go of your jokes. That's the part I haven't been able to do. I don't want to be weird and neurotic and say that if you're a comedian, your jokes are like your babies or some weird crap like that. But there is something to that. Like I have one joke. This is my favorite joke I've ever written. And it took me about 3 years to get this joke exactly the way I wanted it. I'll tell you what the joke is. I'm half Arab and half Irish. My father's from the Middle East. My mother's family's from Ireland. And it is so irritating being half Arab and half Irish because I constantly get pissed and take hostages, but then get drunk and forget where I put them. All right. All right. Thank you. Stop with all the hysterical laughter at home. But that joke, that simple little joke, took so much to get it just right so that it was like, ba ba ba, ba ba ba. So it's hard to let go of that. Now, the other thing it's hard to let go of is that so many of my comedy routines were really affectionate, like toward my elderly Arabic Aunt Lily. I absolutely loved doing routines about my Arabic Aunt Lily because it was like a tribute to her. And I won't go into any long Aunt Lily routines, but I'll just tell you this about elderly Arabic women in my family, and I think really in any Arabic families. Elderly Arabic women have a tremendously unparalleled capacity to create a drama where none exists whatsoever. It's really pretty remarkable. And my Aunt Lily was really the best at this. And so the way that we got her to express this, me and my four siblings, when we went to her house, is we'd ask her things, very simple things like this. Aunt Lily, could I use your phone? She'd stop dead in her tracks as if she'd just been shot and she would sort of put this baleful gaze on the offending party who asked to use her phone, and then she'd start in. Honey, you have to ask to use my phone? Honey, this is not my phone, honey. This is your phone. Everything I have, honey, is for you. If I have food, eat all my food. If I have money, honey, you take my last penny. Oh my God. Now, Aunt Lily was so dramatic. She would literally forget what she was upset about in the middle of her speech. And she'd be like, honey, why? What Aunt Lily has done to you? Why? Why you are so upset with Aunt Lily? What? No. Aunt Lily, no. You got upset with me when I asked if I could use your phone. She's like, you have to ask. And then, oh my God, I blew the timing on that. That's the other thing about jokes too. If you don't get them exactly right, you blow it. So that one, I kind of blew it. But I'll tell you this about my Aunt Lily and that joke was when she was sick and she went into a convalescent hospital. And Aunt Lily didn't speak English really well, but she always knew when I was imitating her. She knew that I was imitating her in love, and she knew that it sounded exactly like her, and she loved hearing it. So she had me do it in the convalescent hospital with orderlies around and nurses around. And I did the whole Aunt Lily routine right up to the very end. You have to ask. And I'm not kidding you. I know it's hard to believe. And that's why I like to say this only when I'm performing, when some of my family members are there who actually witnessed this, because I swear to you, after I did the Aunt Lily routine in her little room at the convalescent hospital, and I was sort of parched, and I said, Aunt Lily, could I have some water from her little pitcher there? And she said, without a trace of irony, she said, you have to ask. And that was the last time I saw Aunt Lily. So it's sort of hard to let some of those jokes go, but it's easy to let them go tonight when we have a speaker, a storyteller, a best-selling author of her caliber. Now, I went to one of her classes, a workshop in storytelling, and I don't go to anybody's classes because I'm arrogant. I think that whatever I need to do, I can figure out on my own. I'm not going to go learn it from you. But she is so good. And when I heard that she was the first person to win a Moth Grand Slam and get a perfect 10, the first to get a perfect 10, I said, I've got to see her. And there's other things that I want to tell you about her after we do this. But right now, what I want you to know is that she's done storytelling all over the world. She teaches storytelling all over the world. She's written 2 excellent books. One is called What's Your Story? And the other, which I've gotten a huge amount out of, is called Long Story Short. And we're going to talk about those a little bit later on when we do a question and answer. But for now, I am so proud. I am so thrilled. And I'm so fortunate to be able to bring to you tonight on Sunday Night Stories, a special edition where we feature Miss Margot Leitman.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I have gone blue for the length of that I'm stuck in my house, so this is the new me. Right when I was born, my family was having some financial difficulties. They had a second child, and children are expensive. And my mother came up with this idea that in order to get us on the fast track to better financial stability, that she would go on a game show. So my mom went on the pyramid and won $10,000. Thus, as the legend has it, saving our family. She bought us a car, and then everything has been, uphill since then. I was obsessed with the story growing up. I watched the videotape of my mother on the game show almost weekly for my entire childhood. And I became obsessed with wanting to go on a game show myself. The one I wanted to go on was The Price is Right. I loved that show. I still do, because it was forbidden in my house. My father is a genius, literally a genius IQ. He went to college on a full scholarship at 16. And he told me that we weren't allowed to watch The Price is Right in my house because it was a show for stupid people. And our house, we were only allowed to watch Jeopardy. So I would sneak off and watch it like it was my version of porn and dreamed of the day that one day I could go on it. So when my husband and I got married in 2008 and the economy collapsed immediately, we were kind of grabbing at straws of what to do next. We lived in New York City at the time, and we decided to fly out. We decided to fly out to California to take some meetings and maybe make a move out there. So while we were out in California, we thought, okay, let's go to a taping of Price is Right. And I asked some people for advice before I went because I had known a strangely high amount of people that had gone to tapings of the show. And they all said the same thing. Be a normal person. Don't work in entertainment. Don't be creative. Don't be an artist. Have a regular job that you can say you have and wear bright colors and be happy. So I bought a size XXL fluorescent pink I Heart NY t-shirt and decided that I would just go and say I was a teacher. Amongst the many things I do teach storytelling, and maybe they would think I was like a normal type of teacher and it could end there. So as I'm waiting in line, they go down the line and they ask everybody before you go in, what's your name? Where are you from? And what do you do for a living? So they get to me. What's your name? Margot. Where are you from? I came all the way from New York City. What do you do for a living? I'm a teacher. Well, what do you teach? Oh, I teach the art of storytelling to adults. And it was like the record scratch. They're like, well, what is that? I said, I don't know. It's kind of like a David Sedaris type of thing. And they were like, okay, David Sedaris. And then they moved on. And I thought, did I vomit? Did I nail it? I don't know. So before I go in, I say to the security guard, what do I have to do to get picked? And he says to me, oh, you got to pray. So I go into the taping and I walk into that studio and I have never in my life felt more at home. I mean, it was just buzzers and glitter and, 70s decor, bright colors. I felt so at peace in there. And I sit down and the show begins. And the first name they call out of the audience, Margot Leitman, come on down. So I go down to contestants row. I can't believe it. Then they have a first item up for bid that I have to bid to get off of contestants row. And it's a bunch of soccer equipment, goals, cleats, jerseys. I don't even know what comes out of my mouth, but I bid. Then they go close it to the actual retail price. Margot, come on stage. Margot, how would you like to win a new car? At this moment, I fell to my knees. I hadn't won a car. They just told me I could win one. So I fell down to my knees screaming, but it was like a silent scream. So I play some game and I'm not good at it because the thing is, I don't know the price of a car. The price needs to be right. I've never had a car. I mean, I lived in Manhattan. You don't need a car. In college, I didn't have enough money to have a car. In high school, I walked to school. So I was off on the price of a car by $8,000 and I was out immediately. So I go sit down. Drew Carey, the host, says to me while I sit down making small talk during the commercial break, so Margot, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, oh God, not this again. So I said, oh, I'm a teacher. And he goes, what do you teach? Well, I teach the art of storytelling to adults. He says, well, that sounds like a made up job. And I laugh. And then we move on. Showcase Showdown. You spin the wheel. I'm like, I'm not out yet. So I go to spin the wheel, which is heavier than you think, hoping to land on $1, and then I can go to the Showcase Showdown, but I don't. The woman before me, Ricky, landed on $1, got a $1,000 bonus, and she rode off to the Showcase Showdown with her washer dryer. So the producers start telling us as the show's wrapping up, you can pay taxes on what you've won, or you can forfeit. But either way, you either need to pay taxes on the thing that you've won, or you walk with nothing, but you won't get the cash value. So I have this very zen moment where I go, I will walk with nothing, I decide. This was an experience. What am I going to do with soccer equipment? I live in Manhattan. I don't need goals, cleats, and jerseys. I don't have children. I live in a one-bedroom apartment. Where am I going to put this? It's gone. But I will walk with nothing but my experience. And so I go to fill out my paperwork, and they say, Margot, there's a problem with your soccer equipment. I said, well, what's that? And they said, it's out of stock. I said, what do you mean it's out of stock? I just saw it on the stage. She said, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to give you the cash value. I said, well, what's it worth? And she goes, $1,664. Again, I scream, I can't believe it. I thought I had won nothing. I had won rent for the month. I was so thrilled. I ran out the door. screaming with happiness. I passed the same security guard. He looks at me and goes, "Oh, you got picked." I go, "Oh, I prayed." So we did. We did move out to LA a short while after that. And we didn't have the car. Well, we ended up buying a used car, one used car to move out here with. But there were two of us. And I had a part-time job, and my husband was looking for work when we moved. And the problem was, I would take the car to work, right? And then my husband was saying, well, I need to go look for work and go on interviews, and I don't have a car. And what if I get a job? How am I going to get to the job? And how am I going to buy a car if I don't have a job? And we kept going in circles. And he said, I think we're just going to have to go on another game show. Our back's against the wall here. There's no options. So we decided to go in the audience of Let's Make a Deal, another show where they pick the contestants out of the audience. However, on this show, all of the people in the audience have to wear costumes. So my husband was in charge of getting the costumes the day before. He picked out pirate costumes, which is fine. But to save money, he bought one adult size one and one child size one at half the price for me, a 5'10" woman. So my vest is about up to here. We go to the taping. A woman dressed as a cat won an iPhone, and then we got picked. We go up. We play a game, some sort of clock game. I'm not sure. The short of it is we won a trip to Palm Springs. We were over the moon. I couldn't believe it. I go and I sit down and I say to my husband, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to Florida. He's like, it's not Florida. It's like an hour and a half away from where we live in LA. It's not that big deal, but it's cool. And I was like, oh, okay, sorry. And he's like, no, it's great. It's great. This is a great thing. And we really come there to win a car, not to be beggars can be choosers. I thought it was awesome. So as the game is going on, we realize that the people that have won the most, the prize with the biggest cash value, they get an opportunity to turn it in at the end in order to have a chance at the big deal of the day, worth $25,000. And by the end of the game, strangely, it was a slow day at Let's Make a Deal because our trip to Palm Springs, because it was a limo and a spa and a 5-star hotel and everything, was the biggest prize anybody had won all day. So we had an opportunity to choose to trade it in or not. So Wayne Brady starts walking towards us. And my husband's like, I want to trade it in. I'm like, I do not want to trade it in. I'm really happy with what we have. And he's like, it's not Florida. May I remind you? And I was like, it doesn't matter. I don't want to trade it in. And he goes, how often will we be in a position to possibly win a car on a game show? And I looked at him and I said, honestly, kind of often, it seems. And he was like, just let me take care of this. So Wayne Brady comes here. I'm standing here. My husband's standing here. Wayne Brady hands me the microphone and says, what did you decide? Do you want to trade it in for the big deal? And I'm about to speak. My husband reaches over, grabs the mic, pulls it towards him and goes, we're going for the big deal. So we go. We pick door 2. Door 1 opens and it's some kitchen appliances. Door 3 opens and it's a bedroom set, meaning that we have won the big deal of the day. Door 2 opens and it was a brand new Toyota Prius worth $25,000. Again, I fell to my knees. This has now become like my thing. I get back up and it's the weirdest thing because no one tells you on a game show to do this. But when you win a car in a game show, you get up and run towards it immediately and sit in the empty car smiling and waving without any direction, which is what I did. Oh, I was so happy. My husband and I were so happy. We still have that car to this day. If you want to be one of those pessimists, it's like, well, what about the taxes? I'm going to be honest with you. We paid $4,000 in taxes up front and have never made a car payment ever, and we still have that car. Now, I have had a wedding day. I have since had 2 children. But I have to tell you, that day on Let's Make the Deal, that was the best day of my life. Mark my words. Before that happened, when we were still in New York, I was more going through a challenging time. It wasn't the best time at all. In fact, my husband had decided, this was about 11 years ago, that he would take me to go see a movie in the afternoon to kind of make me relax, which was this movie called Avatar, which was a big deal at the time. It was a much needed break because I think I was going through either a late quarter life crisis or an early midlife crisis. It was all surrounding stand-up comedy. I'd been doing it for 6 years and I felt like I was completely starting to hate it. I was having anxiety attacks before shows. I was throwing myself on the ground and crying. I would try to cancel before shows if I could. It was a mess. And I felt like I had invested 6 years of my life into something that was not what I wanted to do. And I had also just discovered this thing, storytelling. And that was what I really wanted to be doing. But I didn't know if it was a thing or if I could make it a thing. And I had just been signed by a big management company as a stand-up comedian. I was the first woman they had ever signed. Not because we're against it. It's just that there aren't that many funny women out there. You understand. My new manager a few days before had taken me out to lunch and said to me, so let's talk about what we want to work on here, what we're going to collaborate on. And I was like, yeah, I want to talk to you about that because I don't want to do stand-up. I want to tell stories. I want to try to make a living doing storytelling. And he was like, that's not a thing. And I was like, well, I'd like to make it a thing. And he said, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to do stand-up. And I said, well, I kind of hate stand-up. He was like, well, you're just going to do that because the storytelling is not a thing you can do as a hobby, but you're going to have to just be a stand-up. And so I ordered a filet to the company's tab and thought about how maybe I should look for some new management soon. So, Avatar. We go. It's a forgettable movie. It's blue people. I don't know. Maybe they're not people. I don't really know. What wasn't forgettable was right after the movie, we were back in the living room and I heard a loud beep in my right ear, kind of as if someone was pushing a button on a cell phone for too long. And then I could barely hear anything. I had gone suddenly and acutely, completely deaf in my right ear in an instant. If I covered my left ear, silence. It was really terrifying. And I had no idea what had happened or why. And what's worse, if it didn't ever come back, the last thing I would have ever heard in full hearing would be Avatar. The thing about a strange medical mystery happening to you is that suddenly everyone you know is a doctor. My very holistic friend said to me, Margot, have you thought about the mind-body connection? How happy are you? Perhaps your unhappiness caused you to go deaf. I was furious. So she completely minimized the fact that I was losing one of my senses, and it was really happening. Another friend asked me, have you tried a Q-tip? My mother said to me, well, maybe you shouldn't have gone to all those concerts when you were younger, because that's how acute sudden hearing loss works. You go to some concerts when you're a teenager, and decades later, you go suddenly and completely deaf. I went to go see a specialist. He put me on steroids. Luckily, a slight bit of my hearing was able to come back. We did another round. A slight bit more of it was able to come back, but I was still about half deaf in my right ear. We started to do a bunch of tests. We kept going. We couldn't find the cause or why. We had no idea why this had happened. And if you didn't know why it happened, it was very hard to figure out how to fix it. I kept going back and back. Finally, grabbing at straws, he says to me, I think that you might have this disease that if you do have it, you can't eat salt. So what you're going to do is go on a salt-free diet for a month. If at the end of the month, after eating no salt, if your hearing comes back, you do have this disease and you can never eat salt again, but you'll have full hearing. If nothing happens to your hearing, you can eat all the salt you want, but you're going to be partially deaf. So I do it. And it's really hard for me because I love salt. I mean, I have probably eaten enough salt in my life to cause myself to go deaf. There was one time I was in the Poconos and I was hiking in the woods and I saw a salt lick. And I had a thought to myself, which was, that looks appetizing. But I ate no salt for a month. Oh, by the way, I lost a whopping 1 pound at the end of that month. And I go to the doctor. No change in my hearing. I had still lost as much as the last time. It wasn't coming back. And the doctor says to me, the thing about hearing loss is the further we get away from the initial incident, the less likely it will be for us to be able to get any of it back. So I think at this point, we're going to have to sever ties. I don't know why it happened. I don't know how it happened. I don't know if it's ever going to get any better, but we're going to have to end here. And this was basically one of the worst breakups I've ever had. Because, it's easy when someone cheats and you're throwing dishes at each other's heads. That's a breakup. But when something's just kind of, this is sort of not working, I've got to politely leave. Those are the worst breakups. So I leave, knowing that my hearing is mostly gone in my ear, and I don't know what's going to happen from here. And it just kind of is. I go to Whole Foods and I go to the buffet, and I hit the buffet in not the healthy way, but in the way where you're just getting like a lot of mac and cheese and greasy chicken, that way. And I go to the counter, and they have those signs that every grocery store always have. Would you like to make a donation for such and such? And at the time it was for tsunami victims. And she asked me if I'd like to make a donation. And I said, yeah. And she goes, okay, how much? And I go, $50. And she stops and she goes, wow, you're a really good person. And I start sobbing at the Whole Foods counter. And I go, yes, I am. I am a really good person. And she looks at me and she's like, okay. She wasn't as there for me as I thought she would be, but she has a line. There's always a line at Whole Foods, right? So I leave. And I kind of walk home and live with this uncertainty that, sometimes things happen and you don't know why, and you're just going to have to live with it. And the weird thing is, the only people since then this hearing thing seems to bother are other people. I'm okay with it. Others seem to be very annoyed by the fact that I just don't have an answer about it and I don't know what to do about it. But the weird thing is, the silver lining of the whole thing is that around that time in the silence, after that loud beep, I did stop doing stand-up and I did start telling stories. And I told them constantly and built this whole business out of it and did end up doing it for a living. That dream that I said to that manager that he told me to give up on actually happened. And it all happened right around the time that I lost my hearing. So I've always thought that maybe it was some sort of a sign or something, because something really good came of that time. So I can't really hear that well. I still can't. But I can see things very, very clearly now. I mean that really. I have 20/20 perfect vision because the universe is very fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, that was fantastic, Margot. It was wonderful to hear you. And you really can tell a great storyteller because you're able to convey through this medium, and a lot of people really can't. It is very difficult to put your heart and soul into a little green dot on your laptop. And so that was beautiful, Margot. Thank you so much for that.
You sort of feel like you're losing your mind because you're just like, there's no one there. It reminds me of my early childhood, dancing in the mirror and singing. And there's, you don't want anyone to walk in. It's sort of the same I'm putting into this. Yeah, it's coming back to that.
I know. I was doing something one night. I'm like right in the middle of I'm just pouring my heart and soul into this little tiny green dot. And all of a sudden I just felt so ridiculous. I just felt like an idiot. I just sort of froze up, it's something.
There's a lot of ridiculous things. We have to laugh sometimes, right?
Did I hear you say when you were telling your story that you hated doing stand-up?
Yes.
Me too. Yes. I mean, I did it because I could and because I got paid for it, but it was always torture, always.
It wasn't always torture for me, but then it started to become that. And then I have this weird thing where I was like, well, this is what you do, so you need to keep going with it.
Right.
And I had invested some time in it, and I had gotten nothing huge, but some TV, some, things moving forward with it that I felt like I really had to, in a lot of ways, end my relationship with it. It was very challenging for me.
Well, when you were doing comedy, did you ever grapple with that feeling? I had this especially in the beginning when I was performing in bars and clubs and things like that, but that feeling for a woman comic where the men in the audience are sort of sitting back like, yeah, make me laugh, funny lady. Like there's this whole layer that you go through with men that you don't with women.
Well, I think it's more even so that you go through that layer in stand up and you don't with storytelling, because now I find that a lot of storytellers that come to me to take a class, they're used to that antagonistic audience, which is I agree, go ahead, make me laugh. And then they come and I'm like, listen, you're going to be performing for people that listen to NPR and read the New Yorker. Like,
Right.
it's a different crowd and they're not feeling antagonistic. And also they don't care if you make them laugh. You don't have to be funny. And I think it's really freeing for a lot of people coming from stand-up to get that. But I did feel that antagonistic stuff quite often. I also felt unsafe sometimes in the places I was performing. I left a show once. I didn't even get on stage because there was like a fight breaking out and it just felt really unsafe. And I wasn't getting paid for the show. And I just said to the guy, I was like, I'm going to go. And he was like, what? I was like, why? I'm going to go. This feels very dangerous to me. I'm leaving. Yeah.
I had one like that. That was the Ukiah Police Department's annual Christmas party. And the guy that hired me had seen me somewhere and thought I was funny. And every single other cop hated him for hiring me because they wanted the guy they had last year who was named the Dick Master. And they got me.
Well, if you can't get the Dick Master, get Mary.
I was a pale shadow of the Dick Master. Let me tell you. But let me ask you this. I really wonder, with somebody as talented as you are, I mean, really everything you get involved in, you do to an extraordinary degree. And I really like that about you. Like, you don't just tell stories, you then become an author and write best-selling books about storytelling. And then you travel all over the world and teach other people about storytelling. And I love that. And you're also a teacher, a very fine teacher. And I know you have a memoir writing class coming up, but I know you've done a lot of professional teaching. So that means that's a lot of avenues for a talented person like you to walk down if you wanted. Why storytelling?
I think it's this, my friend once said, love what loves you back. And I think that that's a very fair thing to think about. Before this, I had done some other forms of writing, television writing and some other screenplay writing, etc., and sold a few things and worked in a few writers' rooms and such. And I definitely felt like there was a lot of people, especially in LA, that's a big industry here, doing that. And there were many people doing that, but there weren't a lot of people doing what I was doing. And it felt like every job I tried to get in that industry, it was such an uphill battle, and I would have, to get one thing. But yet I would open up my inbox and someone would be like, hello, would you like to come to my company and teach us about, and it was this, like, it just was flowing. It was sort of like, I always think about when I met my husband, it was the same thing. It was like, there's dating and there's this uphill battle with different people I had dated before him and this push pull. And then I met him and I was like, you like me, I like you. We're on the same page. We want the same things. Like, let's do this together. And we're still married. And it was kind of the same thing with storytelling. It liked me back and it wanted what I wanted. Yeah.
Right. It was just the right fit for you. And luckily for the rest of us, we benefit from it because you have been such an extraordinary teacher. Like in your book, I really do like this one, Long Story Short.
Thank you.
The only storytelling guide you'll ever need. Just tell me a little bit about that, because I've never talked to you about it.
I wrote it after I'd been teaching for a bit, and I was just seeing a lot of amazing things happen from my teaching in my students. I was seeing amazing results in my students, people that were terrified to speak becoming, huge storytellers, people that couldn't even ever imagine getting up in front of a room, then become like touring people that do it. And I was really like, wow, these exercises are really working. This curriculum really works. So I thought, I can only get to so many people, like yourself, Mary. I was able to fly where you are and work with you in person, but I can't do that with everybody. So then I wrote the book so that I could spread this knowledge, because it was really working for a lot of people. And that was why I wrote it. My intention was to spread what was working in my classes. What I didn't anticipate at all was that businesses would start using it for business presentations, or that corporations would start hiring me. And like that, because I don't come from a business world. I have a theater and dance degree, so that I would start going to businesses and working with them. That was not something I ever anticipated happening, or wrote the book for that matter. And that has,
but it's all transferable, isn't it? Like I do teaching in corporations for public speaking, and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with their business per se. And a lot of them aren't public speakers in their line of work, but it's something that once you open it up within you, it helps you with all levels of communication. And storytelling is exactly the same way. It can only enhance the way that we communicate with one another. So it's appropriate across the board.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's funny because I think had I intentionally written it for that, I think I would have been trying too hard. It was sort of like I stumbled upon that market. But I do, and the academia market as well, it's gone into a lot in terms of journalism classes will use them, or writing classes, theater classes. It's gone into a lot of curriculums, which was something that I had always dreamed of working in, and I don't yet, but I mean, I go as a guest speaker a lot in those places, and that's been really cool too. So I just wrote it from an honest place, and it really took off.
This really proves my point that when somebody's a true teacher, as you are, your students find you. And they can find you in all kinds of unusual ways that even you never would have thought of. Because they're out there looking for you.
Yeah, well, it's true. I really do miss, right now with what's going on in the world, I really do miss the in-person connection with students. And I have found that for me, a lot of the reason a person takes a class with me is so that they can understand how to get on stage. And they want to do that physical stuff on stage with people. So the online version of my class at times, for the people that want to take it, it doesn't necessarily work that well because they want to get up in front of a group and conquer that fear. And online, that's not really doing that. So that was why I created a memoir class during this. And I've done one session that already completed because before I wrote these books about storytelling, I wrote another book that is a memoir. So I know the business of that. And that has translated very well online because for me, I was going crazy without teaching personally. It's as much for me as it is for them. But I felt like if I'm going to not teach at all during this, I'm going to lose my mind. So that was part of the reason I started the class. But I'm so glad I did because it's going great. And I'm about to start my second session.
And that's right. You wrote a book too. You wrote a book called Gawky.
Yeah.
What was the subtitle of that? An extremely long, awkward phase?
You know what? I was about to hand you it and show you it, but I think that this is resting on it. Hold on. Let me get it for you.
Tales from an extra long, awkward phase. That's what it is.
Yes. Here it is.
I love that. And the memoir class that you're going to be teaching, to me, it seems like that would really work well for people who are storytellers to really get clear on their own story, right? And
some of them are storytellers, some of them are not. The people that do have storytelling experience, I do think are coming in there with a little bit extra knowledge than those that aren't, but everyone's doing a really good job.
Interesting. Yeah. And you know, when I came to your class, I learned one thing that struck me and has stayed with me so much. It's such a simple thing, but so profound. You said that storytellers need to know whether what they're talking about, their story, is a wound or a scar.
Yeah.
They need to know if it's a wound or a scar. Can you tell me how you came to understand that in your own storytelling and tell our storytellers watching a little about that idea?
Sure. Well, first of all, it's not my original quote, and I don't know whose it is, but it's something that writers say a lot. So I don't want to take credit for creating that quote. That being said, I understood that quote. Actually, the reason I told that story about my hearing loss just now has to do with it is because I told a version of that story soon after I lost my hearing in my right ear. And it was like glossed over with humor, and it was kind of fluffy and not really getting to any of the pain of the situation or understanding of the situation. I mean, because the truth of the matter is, of course, there are worse things to happen to you, but it does suck to start to lose one of your senses. And it's not the funniest thing in the world. And I didn't allow any vulnerability or anything in it because it was such a wound at the time. I wasn't able to talk about it in an honest way or even see what it was. And then I reapproached it again recently because I've realized that the timing of all of that was when I completely shifted my career and had this whole awakening in that time period. And so that's what being a scarred is that you can see what a story is really, truly about, rather than just kind of telling a story for the sake of telling a story.
Well, also what I've seen as I examined this deeply, because I have a lot of material that's very personal, because I had this childhood that was like Friday night movie of the week kind of childhood. So there's a lot of personal incidences, circumstances I can draw on. And when I really examined it deeply, I realized that if you're coming from your wound, you're coming almost from an uneducated place. You haven't resolved it. So there's no way that you can really present it to an audience in a way that has fullness, because you're not complete with it in yourself.
And that is coming through a lot in teaching this memoir class. I actually been doing an exercise with them where I'm having them write a version of the ending, because I need to know that they know where this is going and if they were over it and if there is an ending to this. Because otherwise it's kind of musings on a thing. And so they're like, well, that's really hard to do that. And I was like, this doesn't have to be publishable. I just need to know if you know where this is ending up, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's so interesting, so helpful. I did this one woman show about a year ago, and I've been having a nervous breakdown ever since, because I didn't realize until I went to your class and heard what you said, that some of what I did was coming from a wounded place, and I had no idea until I did it and things in life started falling apart a little bit. I sort of had to go backwards and piece together why it happened. So writing, memoir writing, being clear on yourself, therapy, whatever it takes to be clear on your own story, I think really helps.
Yeah, I would agree completely on that.
And, one thing that I noticed with stories is so many of them falter in the ending. I don't know if you agree with this or if this is just something that I noticed, but it seems like people try to find that good ending, wrapping it up real nice or having it be inspiring. And life itself is so messy and incomplete, and things end in such weird and uninspiring ways that I find myself sometimes with the story wanting to create a good ending, but then that for me makes it inauthentic and ruins it. So can you say anything about that, about story endings?
I think that the best ways to end a story are, if you can, and I don't know, often it's not possible to bring a story back full circle. If that's the type of story you have, if a story in some way ends where it begins, that's great. Another great way to end it would be to end on a laugh. Not too much setup punchline, but if you have a funny way to wrap it up, that's great. The most common way I tend to end a story is to say what happened next. So what I mean by that is a story where you tell about, I don't know, the worst date you've ever been on, let's say. And then at the end of it, you just say, that night I went home and deleted my Match.com profile, or something like that. Like what happened next as a result of this story is the most common success way to end a story. Just think about, what did you do next because of this? And then also you could do a tag or a PS of like a where are they now? Like the date goes terribly, let's say, and then at the end you're like, by the way, I saw him again at a wedding last week and I pretended I didn't recognize him. If something like that has happened, there is a tag or a PS. That's a great way. A great way I don't like to end a story is to use the phrase "I learned," things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And speaking of storytelling and the whole storytelling world, I've only been around it about a year and a half, but I'm the kind of person that believes everyone's entitled to my opinion. Like, that's kind of how I am. So I already have opinions about storytelling and the moth and how they do things. And I just wonder, for somebody like you who's been around so long and involved at such depth in this world, is there anything about the storytelling community in general that you'd like to see change or evolve, or anything you particularly appreciate about it? Just wondering.
Look, many things that I appreciate about it. I do think at times, I don't know if it's the same in San Francisco, I have no idea, but where I live, it seems lately we've had a bit of a kind of like a competition of who can tell the saddest story, so there's like this person goes up and then this person goes up and it's like, oh, but and then my dog died, and then the next person, and then my dog died, and then I broke my leg, and then so that tends to be a bit of, and I understand life is hard, believe me, I do, but I also don't want to compete for who has had the hardest life, and at times that seems to be like who's ever had the worst life will have the best story, and I think everyone should tell their story and every story, if you need to tell your story, you should share that. But I don't think that we should be competing on tragedy, if that makes sense. Like, yeah. I don't know if I'm articulating that properly.
Yes, no, very well. Yeah, I totally get it.
I mean, I was watching this show, Barry, and they were talking about, they used the term competitive grief on that show. And that really struck me of something I've seen, a bit of competitive grief. Grief. Right. And I don't think grief is something we should be competitive about. I think it's a genuine thing and it hurts, but we shouldn't be competing with it. Yeah. So that's something that upsets me a bit. I'm not saying all stories need to be fluff. Like I believe me, I love a serious story.
Yeah, but you're talking about having a balance and also not trying to outcompete grief.
Yes.
Yes, I completely get it. And there's enough grief to go around without manufacturing any. So,
oh gosh, there's so much. Yeah.
Especially right now. So,
and I'm a very sensitive person. So, which is very beneficial for the work that I do, but at times it's hard, to hear. I mean, I hear so many stories in my work, like from, I'll go and work at a conference and I'll hear a bunch of people's stories, or I'll go work with a group. So and then I perform and I hear all the other performance stories. I hear a lot. And I take in a lot of pain from other people at times. Yeah. So that it can be challenging.
Yeah, I totally get that. Now, yeah. I cannot believe that we're out of time already.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I could talk to you.
You're so great. You really made this like.
I could just talk to you for hours. But one thing I really want to mention to people before we go is that, someone like Margot Leitman coming on, we're not paying her a penny. She came on out of the goodness of her heart to bring some happiness into our homes. But she does have one of her students who's recently died of COVID-19 and left behind a small child and a husband. And there's a GoFundMe called Fund for Adam and Sienna. Is that correct, Margot?
Yes.
Fund for Adam and Sienna. It's going to be listed in the credits as the credits roll after this show. It's also going to be in the comments on our YouTube page under this show, and it will also be on the Facebook page for 6 Feet Apart Productions. And we ask you, if you enjoyed Margot, if you appreciated the time that she took to share her gifts with us tonight, please go to the GoFundMe page and help out, because the family desperately needs it. And we would love to have some way to show our appreciation to you, Margot, because it is a great gift that you came on tonight to be with us here at 6 Feet Apart Productions. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And thank you to all of our audience for being here and enjoying this evening with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
6 feet apart, 6 feet apart. It's the newest thing to do. Stay 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart. The distance between me and you. 6 feet apart, 6 feet apart. And when I say I'll keep you very close to my heart, it's purely metaphorical. These times are quite historical. So step aside, let's live our lives 6 feet apart.